Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. If you struggle to know when to keep pushing through something and when to just give up on that battle and find another route or solution, this episode is for you. So thanks for being patient with me while I wrestle through my own struggles of getting my technology up and running. So today I'm just going to sit back on my back patio and just talk to you because that's what I have available to me. My laptop's in for repair and here I am trying to find another solution, which is what I'm going to talk to you guys about today. So in this episode, you're going to gain some insights into that internal struggle that we have about when to keep pushing through to get the results that we're looking for and when to recognize that we're being stubborn and to maybe let go. You're also going to hear about some of my recent experiences with how I've dealt with this internal wrestling battle and when to know when to shift gears and go in a different direction. And ultimately, you'll also gain some tips and insights into how to navigate your own stubborn battles or know when you're being stubborn and need to change your battle gear and change your battle ground. Okay, so I have been dealing with some really difficult situations where I'm trying to make things happen in my own capacity that I just can't make happen in my own capacity. I can't do it in my own strength. I can't do it in my own powers. And I know that that's a very relatable topic for all of us, where we just try to accomplish things because we commit to something or we set out to do something, and then we start hitting obstacles, and then things don't start to go our way, and then maybe we start to realize that just things aren't working. Things start to break down in this cycle. And I found myself recently doing that, trying to power through something and make things happen in my own power, and they just weren't happening. And I was getting frustrated, and I found myself wasting a lot of time trying to make that situation work. So trying to find a way to make this situation work, to get people to do what they advertised that they could do and would do. And then I realized, these aren't my people for this. They're not the people for this thing that I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to get these books printed up for this big event that we're doing. And I can't, I'm doing something in India, trying to find a distribution path. And all of a sudden we need books and we can't get them here in the States. And we have these two big events going on for the book release of USA versus Raj. And I can't get it to work. And so I am working with this particular outlet and I've spent hours. It's the middle of the night. I know that if I go to sleep, that because it's the next day there in India, if I go to sleep, I'm going to lose an entire day, and every day is precious because I'm realizing I might not pull this off. So you're going to have to deal with the background noise because I'm outside. We'll wait for him to go by. So I realize that I'm gambling at this point. I placed this order for these books and I'm like, I can't guarantee they're going to be there in time. And then what am I supposed to do? So I'm exhausted. It's the middle of the night. I have been pulling these back to back almost entirely, staying up all night. I realize, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I go to bed and I'm an hour and a half into sleeping. And I have that epiphany moment where I'm wrestling with the things in our sleep, which if you don't realize that, we do. We wrestle with things in our sleep, in our brain. Even when our body's trying to rest, our brain is trying to figure out our problems for us. So a lot of times our dreams are really convoluted and weird, but they're filled with some of these instances of problems and things that we're trying to work out in our real-time lives. So all of a sudden I wake up and I realize these aren't my people.
like they're doing this other thing for me, but these aren't my people to do this rush order and to make sure that it's getting done. And they don't even have a phone number. So I couldn't even call them up. I'm going back and forth with emails, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm way out of my element. And of course, I have all these people relying on me to just do this thing. And so I eventually am like, I need to find another solution. I need to find someone who can do what I need them to do. And I need to find someone who will talk to me in real time and talk me through it and let me know if I can do this thing that I want to do. And so I finally find someone to do this task for me. And they're talking to me on WhatsApp. So I have a real life person who's going back and forth with me. And I'm having problems with the online interface because I'm in the United States. This app is up and running in India, and there's like firewalls that I can't get past and just different things that are keeping me from progressing through the screens to do what I need to do. And so this person, because I found somebody who was capable, they had the capacity to help me out. So this individual, she's on the other side and she's doing her little magic behind the screen, and I can see her progressing me through these different screens and ultimately getting me over the course of a couple hours, because we're talking about like really large files and going back and forth. Did you get that right? Is the right specs? And let me put that through to our our processing team, make sure they don't need anything for you. So back and forth, like 2.5 hours, we get it done. And of course, at this point, all of my credit cards are frozen. It's the middle of the night here, and my credit cards, all the protection started to kick in, like, this place in India is trying to use your credit card. Are you sure this is you? And then I would say yes. And then because it was after hours, it wasn't unfreezing my card to use it. So I literally went through all of my resources, and I'm like, what the heck am I going to do? And I found myself just in this just vicious, awful cycle of feeling helpless and defeated. And eventually, I had to take a step back, take a walk, take a bathroom break, and really just let myself think through. Sometimes when you're in the heat of something, you can't see things objectively, you can't see things clearly, you can't even see some of the solutions that might be right there in your path. And in this case, I was like, I need to take a break, let me just walk away from this, get some water, take a vitamin C drink, get some energy in me. And I then was like, okay, I've got my PayPal option. If I can get this through on my PayPal, I think I'll be good. Because even if it flags it, it'll probably process this one payment and then say, okay, we need to make sure this is really you. So I get all that to go through, and then I go to sleep. I text everybody on our team before I do that to say, hey, I've got things in motion. So even if this other one doesn't come through, we have this other option. So we'll be doubly prepared, or at least we'll be prepared from one of these options. And so I wake up the next day and I go and I'm teaching my class. I teach composition at the college level. And so I'm teaching my class and I'm talking with my students about their own voice and their own troubleshooting strategies and how they struggle through and wrestle through things and ultimately find solutions for their problems. And so this is something we're talking about in the class, and I'm constantly revisiting what I had just been through in the last 24 hours with this particular project while my computer is breaking down. And it's just all these obstacles. It's just like, talk about the devil dancing on your back with a team of donkeys. So I'm like, I have all of these different things going on, these obstacles in my way. And it was every single time that I stepped back and just took a breath and gave myself some distance that I was able to come up with a different solution. And it really got me thinking about how we sometimes get so stubborn and keep on the course. We're just like, nope, this is the course we set out to do. I'm going to do this. I have to do this. And for whatever our motives are, whatever our reason is, we're like, we have to get this done. And we just keep doing it over and over and over again. And the expression, continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again when it fails and fails and fails is the definition of insanity. And so, yes, you start to feel completely out of your mind when you are going through this process of doing things over and over again and failing and failing and failing. You have to change a constant here. You have to bring something in. Even if you do most of it the same and bring something in, you have to change it. But how many times do we get stuck in that futile cycle of just chasing our tail like a dog? And we're not chasing anything. We're chasing our shadow. And so we get stuck in these cycles where we are constantly failing And what does that do? And that's what I want to bring it back around to some of the things that we've been talking about in the podcast here, is because what that ultimately does is it kills our confidence and it kills our value and our self-worth. And so this very thing that we're trying to, succeed at doing something, and then we are continually failing because we are just trying to push through something that's just never going to give way to us. It starts to suck our confidence out. And then we walk away if we run out of time, because we know every single task has a set amount of time that you can accomplish it in. We don't often have the luxury of like, well, I'll just keep trying tomorrow. I'll just keep trying tomorrow. And then eventually I'll find a way. Those experiences are beautiful when they happen for us. But in real life, in most of the situations that we're dealing with, is like we only have so much time to get through this particular thing. And then we need to move on. We need to turn it in. We need to turn it over. And we have other things that need our attention. And so this is those types of situations where you start to feel anxious then that you you can't handle it and you're not handling it. It's not working the way that you need it to work. And then we start to lose ourselves and we start to lose our way. And so what I realized when I was self-reflecting back on this experience and how I found a way was that reminder that sometimes we need to find someone who can fulfill what we need to fulfill. So in those instances where that particular service or that particular individual cannot meet our needs, cannot follow through, cannot deliver, in the end, we need to admit that they can't do that. It's not in their capacity or it's not in their interest. And then we need to find another way. We need to find another solution, or we need to bring another person in to the situation and build a team of people who are collaboratively working together to get us to that end game result that we're after. So the more I talked about this with my students, and then they started chiming in and relating to this experience, and it was kind of like this unanimous thing that ran through the room, that in so many of their experiences, they too found themselves just stubbornly clinging to like, that's the way I've always done it. That's the way I have to do this, or not even being able to see the way that they do things, just literally trying to claw their way through something and things are going wrong and they just start getting buried and the earth is coming in over them. And all they can see is the fact that they need to deliver on this particular thing or they need to meet this particular deadline. And they can't, because they can't claw their way out of this hole that they're in. And there's so much power in accomplishing something that you're trying to do by just changing something or just completely finding a different way or a different outlet. Because at the end, it's all about what that end goal is. It's not about how we get there. And so sometimes we lose sight of that particular detail. Maybe we have our identity attached to something. We feel like we have to have a particular title, a particular job, or a particular role in a different group. It doesn't matter, even in our friend groups. Or maybe we see all of our friends getting engaged or getting married or becoming parents, and we have that deficit that we feel when we're trying to accomplish very similar things in our lives, and then something gets in our path, an obstacle that keeps us from fulfilling those goals or fulfilling that in the time that we thought that we should be doing that. And, this got me thinking about a lot of topics that we've talked about in previous episodes about relationships and the harmonies and disharmonies, the yin and the yang in relationships, and how sometimes we want our relationships to go a particular way, or we want people to perform particularly in relationships, or we want particular outcomes that the other person doesn't necessarily want the same outcomes. And I started thinking about how sometimes we expect things out of people that they just don't have the capacity to give us, or they're just not willing to give us. And we just keep blindly or stubbornly pushing the relationship forward, almost dragging the person through the relationship because we're like, we have to exist this way. We have to coexist this way. Other people do it. I see it happening, and I've experienced it in relationships with loved ones, in the immediate family nucleus, or even an extended family, or friends that become family, or really close friends, or even work acquaintances that you can't imagine those seasons of your life without those individuals that feel very much like family for that period of time, for that season. Recently, I have witnessed someone who I care about kind of in this vicious cycle where she's constantly telling, all of the finer details about different stories and different experiences that mean absolutely nothing to the person she is dating. And, I sometimes get to hear the tail end of these things or parts of it as I'm passing through in different engagements. And I keep coming back to this kind of topic that I've been talking about on the podcast. And I was thinking about that today when I thought about what are some other relational types of things that I'd like to share with you guys. And I was like, oh my God, this is a perfect example, because I remember a time in my life where I was totally lost in the sauce in this regard, where I didn't know that there are just certain things that some people just aren't interested in hearing. I know some people aren't interested in hearing anything you have to say. They'll ask you how you're doing, but they don't really care about the answer. And that's not who I'm talking about here. I'm talking more about the people who just don't want that particular type of engagement with you, and you just don't realize it, you don't recognize it, or maybe you just don't care because you have no one else to talk to, and you're just going to be like, blah, I need to tell somebody this because you're my only person, and you get it by default. And maybe, they're not recognizing the social cues of that person's completely checking out. In this situation, the individual is very aware of the other person checking out, and she just kind of gets frustrated. Like, you're just not listening to me. I'm, of course, on the outside going, yeah, he just is not going to listen to you in that capacity because he's your wrong person for this type of conversation. You need to have this conversation with someone else. There are plenty of things that you two have in common or that you two should be talking about and engaging, and this just isn't the thing. And, it really was, I seem amused right now, but my heart kind of breaks for them because so many people get lost in that cycle, or people get trapped in only making one person their everything. Like, this person is my everything. And we're not designed to have no friends or one or two friends. We're designed to have different people in our lives to serve different purposes. We have to reciprocate that also. We have to be that to different people in our lives also, because they have similar needs and have to have those met by different people in different relationships. And we have to recognize that. We have to recognize that in our personal relationships, but this could extend everywhere. We have to do this in our professional, in our creative interactions as well. So when you think about when you're in a work environment, there are just things that people just don't have the capacity to do. There are things that people just aren't going to be in pace with one another. They're not going to be in sync. We're not in lockstep with everybody that we are interacting with in a work setting or even in an academic setting, which I spend a lot of time in an academic setting, or in our personal relationships. And yet we lose sight of that. Or maybe I'm telling you something for the first time that you've never even considered, that it's really beneficial for us to recognize these things so that we're not, number one, beating ourselves up, but number two, burning out our relationships and then wondering why people stop returning our calls, or people just want to get to the chase, right? They'll call you up and they'll be like, oh, I just want to ask you this really quick question. And then you start to think, oh, they're really busy. They're too busy for me. Or you start speculating because they're not really telling you, like, oh my God, your stories are so long. And I remember someone telling me, like, I don't want to hear your long stories anymore. And I first was like, that's really, they were really rude about it. And I was always really good about listening to their really long stories and like asking them questions because I was really interested in some of the things that they were doing. And when they said that, I was kind of like, wow, rude. And they just said, like, I don't want to hear anything that has to do with your writing life. And I just thought, well, that's a really big part of my life. So to say that you don't want to hear anything about it is just really weird, because I'm not always talking about like, oh, my book, or this. I'm talking about like some of the really important things that I'm wrestling with, or the people I'm trying to help tell their stories and things. And so I was like, all right. And for a while I was really offended by that. And, I still recognize it as kind of a rude thing in that instance, but I always think about it like, as when I'm thinking about this topic, as they were just somebody who didn't have an interest in those things. They didn't have an interest in those things, and they didn't care that they hurt my feelings saying, I don't want to hear about that. It's like saying, I don't like a specific genre of movies or books or music. Like, I don't like country music, so I don't really care about how much you like about it. I don't want to hear the songs. I don't want to hear you talking about the songs. And so, if I could just try to put it into that context and say, okay, the person is kind of that person anyway. That's their personality. They're just like, I don't care. I say it like it is. But there's some validity if I try to let them be human to say, they don't want to hear that country song. They don't want to hear about country songs. And I'm like, okay, I can make peace with that and just not talk about those things. But it always made me anxious to be like, oh, am I going to say something that's a crossover? And they're going to say, oh, you're doing it. You're totally disrespecting what I asked you not to do. And, that kind of puts us in an awkward situation or makes us anxious. And the last thing we want to do is feel anxious and like we're walking on eggshells with people. But I'm not even really friends with this individual anymore, so I don't even have that pressure to worry about it. But it's always a constant reminder that, people have not just a capacity. Sometimes people just don't have an interest in it, and they will literally just stop being friends with you or stop listening to you when you start talking about those things. And so when that happened to me, and this was probably maybe 15 years ago that this happened to me, it planted a seed, and it got me thinking about what my input is in different relationships. And I was like, okay, I got to work on that. And it was a really long work in progress, because I can say that even for the next 10 years, I was still getting caught up in that trap of just not getting out much socially and just talking and talking and talking to people about things that they really didn't want to hear. And so then they would just tune out. And I don't know that I was really paying attention to the fact that they were tuning out. And now, sadly, I have a couple of relationships where they just tune out as soon as I open my mouth, even though I've done that work. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not the same person. I recognize that, I may have been just trying to talk about the wrong things or all the same things with the wrong company. And it's really kind of disheartening to think about how those types of things happen in a relationship, and then you damage it, and then it's like, well, how do I fix this? How do I show people that I'm not that same person? And all I can say to you is you just have to show up and just keep showing people that you are a different person. And if they are willing to see that, and if you had that kind of connection with them in the past, then that will eventually come around. If we think about things as, I have to play the long game, this isn't a checkers game, this is a chess match, then it helps us to be patient and to put in the work and just keep doing it, and to know that our reward is probably not going to be instant. And we might have those times where we have the instant gratification, or the moment where we instantly feel fulfilled because we can see that the power in that connection, or the transformation that's happened, or that can happen, or that's going to happen, or that happened in that one instance. But, overall, all things that need to be healed take time, and they take attention. Just like I've talked about in other episodes, you can't just be like, oh, well, time alone will correct it. No, if you just let something that's like a gaping wound heal with time, it's not going to heal. It's literally going to get infected, and you may have to cut the limb off. And when we think about that in our personal relationships and the things that we really care about in our lives, we have to put the care into it. So the time and the care. So the time part is where we have to say, it's not going to happen overnight. There is no instant gratification for this. We can have moments of gratification while we're putting in the time and while we're waiting for that end goal and the whole healed outcome that we're after. And that's going to be something that we need to put that attention into, and we need to put that time into, and it's worth it. You can't get on the table and tap dance and say, it's over, I'm a new person, look at me. You have to put the time in, and you have to believe that if you keep doing it, that end goal is achievable. And the really interesting thing about that, not just the belief, because it's the action behind the belief. You can't just sit around and pray and wish and pray and wish. You actually have to do. You have to do, and then do, and then do some more, and then pray, and then believe, and then do, and then do, and then do some more. over and over and over, lather, rinse, and repeat, because it's in the doing that we grow as individuals, that we heal ourselves as individuals, and that healing can shift and that people can see that we're changed. And also in that whole process, the plot lines over and over and over, all the way through the process, we heal our confidence. And maybe we develop confidence for the first time when we never had that confidence to begin with. And that leads us to that really bold and really fierce self-worth, and that we know we're something important. We know we're valuable. And then those things go back and forth. So knowing your value and knowing your worth and knowing you have a place at this table, and then your confidence starts to come out of that, and then it starts to show. And those two things feed each other over and over and over again. And that is what informs this Restore Your Inner Warrior podcast series, is that idea that you can put all of this work into yourself. You hear the tree frog. You put all of this into yourself, and the fruit of that is you do fiercely regain that confidence. And there are very few things in this world that feel more gratifying than when you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, yes, right? I believe in myself, and I believe in the missions that I set out to do. And I will just keep passionately going through my life, being myself, growing in myself, learning from my trials, learning from my tribulations, and even learning from your successes. We have to also be able to look at the learning that happens in self-reflecting on those victories and on those successes, and how those will also help propel us forward, because we will be a work in progress until we die. You don't reach some point of perfection and then get to live out like, oh, I'm going to live out 10 years at this point of perfection. No, we are continually a work improving over and over and over. We are growing constantly, and we are changing constantly. And then we have to adapt to those changes and grow, and then figure out and discover who we are in that new space and in that new world, and what our new goals are, and what goals and aspirations we need to put to rest, or we need to say, check, that's done. We've lived that season. And now what do we do with this season? I find myself having this discussion with my husband over and over and over lately, where he's in that pre-retire state. And it's like, it's not a bad place to stay, but you've got to stop resisting. You have to start making peace with certain things. And you also have to start embracing the mindset to say, you've achieved and accomplished all of these incredible things, and now maybe it's time to shift and reconsider what is the next set of goals and ambitions that you have, so that then you can adjust and you can start to believe in something that is achievable. You've already achieved these things, and to keep spinning your wheels and trying to keep living life to that capacity when you can't live your life to that capacity is really futile. And it's killing your self-confidence, and it's killing your value and your passions. Your passions are suffering as a result of it. So I really hope that you are encouraged today to just keep living it out and just keep readjusting, and to be willing to know when you have to keep pushing through something. I get it. Sometimes the obstacles are there and you just have to keep pushing through. And you also have to know when you need to stop for a second, take a breath, maybe take a walk around the block, and then come back to it and say, is this an instance where I need to reconsider another way, or I need to bring in some other help here, or I need a whole new plan? And we have to be willing to have that discussion with ourselves, because at the end of the day, we just want that outcome. There will be times when we feel the pressure closing in on us, where we feel like we're being squeezed, we're being pushed beyond our limit. And sometimes that will make us be more stubborn and more rebellious and more determined to just stay the course and finish it up. And we lose sight of finishing strong. And that's okay to feel that way. Don't lose your way, though. Take a step back and readjust, and remember that your goal is to finish strong. And so you need to do what it takes to finish strong. And even if it means rest, even if it means take a step back, take a breath, because in that moment of silence, or in that rest, you'll find your way again. Just remember to get back up. Don't quit altogether like, oh, this is too much. Just remember that You got to come back at it, and maybe you'll come back at it stronger. And these are the ways that we continue to develop our confidence and that we get through stuff. We have to get through stuff. So this is the way that we get through stuff, is we have to give ourselves grace and give ourselves sometimes space and change the course when we need to change the course. And there's no formula. You sometimes just have to find your way in real time, and you have to bring these strategies and this thinking into it to know when to do that. So I hope that you're encouraged today to just keep figuring it out. Just keep doing those things, to start to recognize if this is something that you struggle with, when to keep pushing, when to take a step back, when to readjust, when to bring in the right help, when to make peace with things, and when to completely move in an entirely different direction because you are after that end goal. So be encouraged today.
Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. Also, if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. And as you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Friday. Ciao.